Imagine a world torn apart by faith, where kings and peasants alike abandon their homes to fight in distant deserts, where the name of God is used to justify conquest, and where a single city, Jerusalem, becomes the center of the world's most brutal wars. This is not a story of heroes or villains. It's a story of belief, betrayal, and blood. A clash between East and West that changed history forever. Welcome to our channel, where the echoes of history come alive. Today, we journey back nearly 1,000 years to a time when faith was power, and power demanded war. This is the tale of the Crusades, 9 massive military campaigns that brought Europe and the Middle East into centuries of conflict and transformation. From the papal throne in Rome to the sands of Jerusalem, this is a saga of holy purpose and human greed, of courage and cruelty. Let's begin. Part 1. The Call to Arms, the birth of a holy war. The story begins in 1095 AD, when the Christian world was trembling. Europe was a land of chaos, kingdoms at war, peasants starving, and nobles fighting for scraps of power. The Church, led by Pope Urban II, saw an opportunity to redirect this violence toward a common enemy. Far to the east, the Seljuk Turks, powerful Muslim warriors, had seized much of the Byzantine Empire and captured Jerusalem, Christianity's most sacred city. Reports of Christian pilgrims being robbed, enslaved, or killed spread through Europe like wildfire. But behind these rumors lay politics. The Byzantine Emperor Alexios I Komnenos, desperate for help, sent an urgent plea to the Pope. Urban II saw not just a chance to help, but to unite the divided Christian world, to bring the Eastern Orthodox and Roman Catholic churches back together under his authority. So, in November 1095, at the Council of Clermont in France, the Pope took the stage before a massive crowd. He spoke with fire in his voice. "Brothers and sisters in Christ, your brethren in the East cry out for help. The infidels defile the holy places. Take up your swords and march to free Jerusalem from the hands of the unbelievers. Deus vult, God wills it." The crowd erupted in tears and shouts. Men ripped their clothes, women wept, and knights knelt in the mud, pledging their swords to God. Across Europe, the cry spread, "God wills it." For many, it was salvation, a path to heaven for sinners. For others, it was an adventure, a chance for land and riches. Thus began the First Crusade, a movement that would send tens of thousands of Europeans marching to the Holy Land. Among them were knights like Godfrey of Bouillon, Bohemond of Toronto, and Raymond of Toulouse, men of faith, ambition, and pride. But there were also peasants, beggars, women, and even children, answering what they believed was God's call. None of them truly understood the horrors awaiting them. Part 2. The March to the East. Blood, faith, and fire. The first army to set out was not one of knights, but of peasants. Led by Peter the Hermit, a barefoot preacher with wild eyes and burning zeal, thousands of farmers and townsfolk began walking east in what came to be known as the People's Crusade. They had no armor, no training, and little food. They marched through Germany and the Balkans, attacking Jewish communities and burning towns, believing they were fighting God's enemies. This wave of fanaticism left thousands dead before even reaching the Holy Land. When they finally reached Asia Minor, they met the disciplined forces of the Seljuk Turks and were slaughtered almost completely. The fields ran red with blood. Peter himself barely escaped alive. But then came the real Crusader armies,
knights in shining armor, banners of the cross fluttering against the wind. They crossed into Byzantine territory, where Emperor Alexios I greeted them with both fear and strategy. He offered them food and passage, but demanded they swear an oath to return any captured lands to him. Suspicion filled the air. The Byzantines saw the Crusaders as wild barbarians. The Crusaders saw the Byzantines as traitors. Yet, together, they moved toward Nicaea, the Turkish stronghold. In 1097, the Crusaders besieged Nicaea, capturing it after weeks of fighting. But the real challenge lay ahead, the vast, dry lands of Anatolia. Under the blazing sun, they marched through deserts, ambushed by Turkish archers, dying of thirst and disease. Tens of thousands perished. By 1098, the surviving Crusaders reached Antioch, one of the most heavily fortified cities in the Middle East. The siege lasted 8 long months. Starvation forced knights to eat their horses, rats, and even the bodies of the dead. When the city finally fell, the Crusaders turned on each other. Greed replaced faith. Yet somehow, through chaos and miracle, they pressed on, until finally, in June 1099, they stood before the holy city itself, Jerusalem. The First Crusade had reached its goal, but at a terrible cost.
Part 3. The Siege of Jerusalem, Victory and Vengeance. When the Crusaders saw Jerusalem for the first time, many fell to their knees, weeping and praying. But tears quickly turned to fury. The city was held by the Fatimid Caliphate, a Muslim dynasty from Egypt. Its walls were strong, its defenders determined. The Crusaders surrounded Jerusalem on June 7, 1099. They had little food, no water, and only scraps of wood for siege towers. Under the blazing sun, men died of thirst. Priests led processions around the city, barefoot and chanting prayers. They believed God would grant them victory, and on July 14th, after weeks of suffering, they launched their final assault. Using makeshift towers and ladders, they stormed the walls. The fighting was brutal, desperate, and merciless. When the gates finally fell, chaos erupted. For 2 days, blood filled the streets. Men, women, and children, Muslim and Jewish alike, were killed without mercy. The Crusaders saw it as divine justice. To the world, it was horror beyond measure. One eyewitness wrote, Part 4. The Rise of Muslim Power, Saladin. By the mid-12th century, the Christian Crusader states, despite their initial victories, faced mounting challenges. The political landscape of the Middle East was fragmented. Small Muslim principalities fought among themselves, weakening the region. Yet out of this chaos arose Saladin Yusuf ibn Ayyub, known in Europe as Saladin, whose vision and leadership would forever change the balance of power. Saladin was born in 1137 in Tikrit, a city along the Tigris River. Trained as a soldier from a young age, he was steeped in the values of courage, discipline, and devotion to Islam. By his early 30s, he had unified Egypt and Syria under his banner, demonstrating both strategic genius and charismatic leadership. Unlike the fragmented rulers before him, Saladin understood that only a united Muslim world could reclaim Jerusalem from the Crusaders. His vision was clear: restore the sanctity of the Holy City and protect the Muslim lands from foreign occupation. In 1187, after careful preparation, Saladin launched his campaign to capture the Crusader states. His army was disciplined, well-trained, and motivated by faith. Meanwhile, the Crusaders were overconfident, politically divided, and often underprepared. The decisive confrontation occurred at the Battle of Hattin on July 4, 1187. Saladin's forces surrounded the Crusaders near the Sea of Galilee. Knights, exhausted from heat and thirst, were trapped on a plateau with no escape.
The battle was brutal. Water sources were blocked, archers rained arrows from a distance, and Saladin's cavalry executed a precise encirclement. King Guy of Lusignan and thousands of crusaders were captured. The True Cross, a sacred Christian relic, fell into Saladin's hands, a devastating psychological blow to the Crusader morale. By October 1187, Saladin had achieved his ultimate goal. Jerusalem surrendered. Yet unlike the massacre perpetrated by the Crusaders in 1099, Saladin showed remarkable mercy. Christian inhabitants were allowed to leave the city peacefully. Pilgrims could visit sacred sites, and property was largely protected. Saladin's reputation as a chivalrous, honorable leader spread far beyond his empire. Europeans, though enraged by the loss of Jerusalem, respected him. Muslims celebrated his victory as a unifying moment in Islamic history. The fall of Jerusalem ignited fury across Europe, setting the stage for the most famous crusade of all, the Third Crusade, a titanic clash that would pit legends against one another.
Part 5. The Third Crusade, Clash of Titans. In response to Jerusalem's fall, Europe mobilized its greatest leaders. 3 monarchs took the cross. Richard I, the Lionheart of England, a knight famed for bravery and ferocity. Philip II, Augustus of France, a cunning and ambitious ruler. And Frederick I, Barbarossa of the Holy Roman Empire, a veteran military strategist. Frederick's journey ended tragically when he drowned in the Selef River in Anatolia, a blow that demoralized his army. Philip returned to France due to political tensions, leaving Richard as the primary European force against Saladin. Richard captured Acre in 1191 after a grueling siege. The city was defended fiercely, yet European ingenuity in siege engines, mining, and military strategy won the day. Despite the brutality of war, both leaders demonstrated extraordinary strategic skill. Richard and Saladin never met in battle, but mutual respect developed. Richard's courage and Saladin's honor became legendary, shaping tales of chivalry that would endure for centuries. The Crusades saw several key battles. Battle of Arsuf, where Richard's disciplined knights routed Saladin's forces. Naval battles securing Mediterranean supply lines. Numerous skirmishes, sieges, and political maneuverings. Yet Jerusalem itself remained in Muslim hands. Exhaustion, limited resources, and diplomatic considerations prevented Richard from capturing the city. In 1192, a peace treaty was signed. Christians could visit Jerusalem freely. Saladin maintained control of the city. Both sides withdrew forces strategically. Though not a complete victory, the Third Crusade cemented the legacies of Richard and Saladin and highlighted the complexities of war, faith, and diplomacy in the medieval world. Part 6. The Fourth Crusade, Betrayal of Constantinople. The Fourth Crusade, 1202 to 1204, marked a controversial turn. Intended to recapture Jerusalem, it instead diverted to Constantinople, a Christian city in Eastern Europe. Financial issues plagued the Crusaders. They owed Venice for transport but could not pay. Venetian leaders proposed attacking Zara, a Christian city, to cover debts. Crusaders reluctantly agreed, setting a precedent for political manipulation and betrayal in religious campaigns. The culmination was the sack of Constantinople in 1204. Streets ran with blood, priceless artifacts and relics were looted, churches desecrated. The Crusade, originally aimed at reclaiming the Holy Land, had devastated the Byzantine Empire instead. This event deepened the schism between Eastern Orthodox and Roman Catholic churches, undermining the idea of a united Christian front in the East. It also marked the beginning of the decline of Byzantine power, changing the balance of power in Europe and the Mediterranean forever. Part 7. The Later Crusades and Decline. Subsequent crusades continued sporadically. The Fifth Crusade, 1217 to 1221, targeted Egypt
but failed due to logistical and strategic errors. The Sixth Crusade, 1228 to 1229, led by Emperor Frederick II, achieved a brief diplomatic victory by negotiating control of Jerusalem. The Seventh and Eighth Crusades, led by King Louis IX of France, focused on Egypt and Tunis, ending in failure. The Children's Crusade, 1212, remains tragic. Thousands of European children, inspired by religious zeal, attempted to reach Jerusalem. Most never arrived. Many died or were sold into slavery. By the late 13th century, the Crusades had lost momentum. The Crusader states were isolated, poorly supplied, and politically divided. Muslim leaders had learned from previous battles and unified their forces strategically. The dream of Christian dominance in the Holy Land was fading.
Part 8. The Fall of the Crusader States. The final blow came in 1291 when Acre, the last significant Crusader stronghold, fell to the Mamluks under Sultan al-Ashraf Khalil. Crusader knights fought valiantly, but were overwhelmed. The fall of Acre marked the end of the Crusader presence in the Holy Land. Although military efforts ended, the Crusades left a lasting impact. Creation of military religious orders like the Knights Templar and Hospitallers. European monarchs consolidated power. Trade networks between Europe and the Middle East expanded dramatically, introducing new goods, spices, and knowledge. The Crusades shaped political, religious, and cultural landscapes for centuries to come. Part 9. Cultural, social, and economic impact. Beyond warfare, the Crusades facilitated immense cultural exchange. Trade routes connected Europe to Middle Eastern markets. Architecture and engineering advanced, with castles, fortifications, and military technology spreading across Europe. Medicine, astronomy, mathematics, and philosophy from Islamic civilizations influenced European universities. However, the Crusades also deepened religious tensions. Persecution of Jews in Europe escalated, often fueled by Crusader fervor. Muslim-Christian hostility persisted, shaping relations in the Mediterranean for centuries to come. The Crusades inspired legends, literature, and art, from troubadour songs to illuminated manuscripts. The stories of knights, kings, and sultans became central to European cultural memory. Part 10. Legacy of the Crusades. Though the Crusades ended militarily, their legacy was profound. They reshaped European and Middle Eastern politics. They demonstrated the power of religious motivation in global affairs. They expanded trade, knowledge, and cultural interaction. They left enduring myths of heroism, chivalry, and honor. Saladin and Richard the Lionheart became immortalized in history as symbols of bravery and integrity. The Crusades remind us of the dual nature of faith, a force for both unity and division, courage and cruelty. Today, their stories resonate in modern discussions of war, religion, and cultural identity. The Crusades remain one of the most compelling and complex chapters in human history, a testament to the power of belief, ambition, and humanity itself.